Need to get the slideshow going. And here's the slideshow from the beginning. All right, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yay, all right. Welcome everybody. Thank you for coming on this Friday before your spring break. These are just reminders, everything with a checkbox beside the title. We went over last time, but just a reminder, everything is due June 1st. Make sure that you get all that information in the shared folder and you turn it in, and then check with your county as to what they want to do with the documentation. The verification report is short but sweet. It's got important information. You're needing to include the amount of direct and indirect supervision, somehow indicating that you are tracking and you have some sort of documentation of the weekly direct, indirect supervision. And if you did telepractice, the percentage of first telepractice sessions observed. Guys, we need all your certificates in the shared drive. There's no place to turn it in the SLPA team, so make sure you upload all your certificates. And of course, any attendance at a state or national conference. Some of you have asked about speechpathology.com, absolutely. And anything that we've provided will count, and also anything that your county has provided that has been approved by the State Department. What's not counted is if you're doing a practicum or classes which you take for a pay upgrade or a certificate renewal. So get your certificates in there, please, and if you need help with uploading, let me know. Make sure that you have the DUSA form attached, but in this instance, on your team and also on your shared folder, they will be in separate places. But if you were mailing all this in, it would be attached. So make sure that you do that. Make sure that your supervisor puts the dates of the direct and indirect, direct observations and the progress report review. Put the dates. You can choose to just do a fourth 9 weeks or put all of them on one. It doesn't matter. All I need is to have documentation of each 9 weeks. So however you want to do it is fine with me. You just need to show that you filled one out for each 9 weeks. Dates, make sure you save it in your shared folder, and the dates. So the renewal is every year for you guys. It's valid for 1 year. It expires on June 30th, and you need those 12 hours for renewal. We've talked about that. And your documentation of your direct and indirect supervision. And if you can hang off just a little bit, hold off a little bit till maybe the middle of May to get this turned in and do the renewal, because it makes life a lot simpler for the certification department and us. So I know you want to get it done. I know it's just like, let's see if we can get it. I want to get all my ducks in a row. I want to get all my checks made, but if you could just hold off to the middle of May, that would be great. You know, you go to the WVDE certification like you did before, but this time is going to be a renewal. And you would use Form 38. And you would do that on the website, but you can see what information you need to fill out because it's also in the guidance document. Okay, any questions about any of that? Unmute your mic if you have any questions, because like I said, I know I went fast. All right, big disclaimer. We're going to talk about what ASHA has proposed as the SLPA scope of practice. The disclaimer is that may or may not change what we do in our guidance document, because they're basically deferring to us or to the states. We used what ASHA recommended to the last time to make the guidance document, but now their guidance is a little more vague and less defining, and that can be good and bad. And I'm gonna get your feedback as to whether it's good or bad. So There's a greater emphasis on ethics in the ASHA document. A lot of, if you look at it, or if you want access to it, I can, figure out a way to get it to you, or your supervisor may have access to it. But it really breaks down the ethics a lot. There's a greater emphasis on collaboration and communication between you and your supervisor, which it makes sense. It's wonderful. But it can also make a little bit more pressure on you guys, and that's what I want to hear about. Okay, so I'm glad they're recognizing state licensed SLPs and not just ASHA certified, because that's good. Some of our SLPs don't have ASHA. I mean, they could, but they're choosing not to be ASHA, belong to ASHA. And the frequency and the type of supervision should be based on your competencies and the caseload need, which are both determined by the supervising SLP and you. So how do you determine appropriate and adequate direct and indirect supervision? So we know that the SLP is still ultimately responsible for all the kids on your caseload. But we also know that there's some variables here, that some of you have more experience. Some of the caseload hasn't changed for years. And so that they do not need as much supervision as someone just starting out, or starting out with a new kind of caseload. And so it talks a lot about there should be functional assessments of your skills, and it should be an integral part of your supervision. Now, we have evaluations in the supervision or the guidance document, but I'm not so sure that very many of you have used them. But the emphasis would be greater if we would change anything, and maybe not put an exact percentage of supervision required. It would rely on your feedback and your supervisor's feedback and your all's determination as to how independent you feel you can be, which is it's good. I mean, I see the value of it, but it's also concerning too. So here it talks about your responsibility is to communicate your self-assessment of competence, which there is a form in there which you evaluate yourself. And then the supervisor also provides you feedback as to where they see you being independent. And that documentation, if we would change anything and not give you a specific amount of direct or indirect supervision, would be that would be what would determine it, and that would be the way to validate it. And so you've seen these evaluations or these feedback forms. ASHA is going to develop their own, but what do you think? How do you think that would work in your county? And again, here's another place where they talk about you're responsible for communicating your knowledge, your experience, and your self-assessment. And then the SLPA should, provide that information. The SLP's responsibility is to provide feedback, and you validate the SLPA's competence. It's emphasized a lot, and I see why. I just don't know how that's going to work in certain situations. But here's your self-evaluation, which is in the guidance document. Here's the level of supervision and instruction. That's not an evaluation. That's more or less for the supervisor to say, you're really independent with that, or maybe with this particular student or this particular situation, you might need more guidance. It's a good place to start talking about, how to provide the best services to your students. So this is a good form to use. I just don't know how much it has been used. And then it's very important. Remember, it just mentioned you should advocate, provide feedback to the SLP. Like, I need more help on this. Some of you've talked about, I don't feel comfortable with ours, or I don't feel comfortable with this. So this particular form would let you say, I need more instruction from you, and this is how best I learn. I might like it if you show me. Some of you might like it if the SLP gives you a book or an article, but this is about you and what you need. they talk a lot about your self-advocating for needed supervision and training, and to make sure that you're following the scope of practice. So I know sometimes that's a little awkward, particularly in a county where you're like maybe new, or you've got a new relationship with your supervisor, and then you're going to say, listen, I need you to provide more. I need some more help from you. And the supervisor saying, I don't have any time. I get this. This is reality. So how comfortable do you feel advocating for yourself? How comfortable do you feel within that county? I'm not wanting to know the dynamics in your county, but this is important. If we would consider changing any of these guidelines, it's going to rely a lot upon your self-advocacy and your honest opinion of what you can do and can't do, and your SLP's feedback. So here are the conflicting variables: your knowledge and skills and the caseload. And then there's administrative pressures, which are saying we need to see as many students as possible who have IEPs. And so there might be pressures for you to get less supervision so that your supervisor can take on more students. And then trying to schedule all these things. I mean, I get the reality. And I don't know if this is a concern, but there's a place there for you to be honest about how you think that would work if we would do that. And I'm not saying for sure we are, but I want your feedback. This is your chance. So this is the other thing that might be an issue. Deuces have been hard. Trying for your supervisor to see all of your students on your caseload every 60 days or every 9 weeks has been challenging. However, if we reduce the amount of direct and indirect supervision required each week, the thought would be that then they would need to see your students every 30 days because you're probably seeing those students two times a week or so. What do you think about that? Would that work? If they're not doing the weekly so much, and this is a scheduling issue, I don't know how flexible schedules could be or how your SLP could see your all your students, but that kind of makes sense. It is about time that SLPAs be recognized for all the knowledge and skills that you have. And if you're familiar with occupational therapy assistants or CODAs or physical therapy assistants or PTAs, you know, we're moving slow compared to how they are recognized and the amount of supervision they need. This is more in line with what CODAs and PTAs need. And so it is more often as far as the direct contact, but it may not be as often each week. Just a thought. So what do you think about the every 30 days for direct? I mean, it doesn't have to be the whole session. It could be just, you know, them seeing each student that you have and you asking any questions that you have, or, you know, talking about their progress and you all collaborating on next steps. Someone had suggested, particularly with the indirect observations, sometimes are busier than others. And if you have this weekly amount of indirect supervision, then there are other times when you need more. I mean, like if there's IEPs coming up or progress monitoring or whatever. So what if we averaged the monthly indirect instead of doing it weekly? So that would mean, you know, a 10% over a month. So 1 week they might not do so much, but some week in that month, they might have 2 or 3 hours that they're doing. That was a suggestion. How do you think that would work for you? Do you feel like you need the indirect supervision on a regular basis, or how do you feel about it being more when the paperwork or the craziness or the progress reports are due? That's your feedback. This is what I need from you. And then they've talked about assessment or administering and scoring screenings. You're probably already doing screenings, and you are assisting the SLP with some assistance, with some assessments. But here's what ASHA said, which is, I must say, some of ASHA is a little vague, but they're saying administering and scoring assessment tools, if you're allowed, if it doesn't specify an SLP, that maybe if you've demonstrated competence in administering that assessment tool, possibly that could be something you could do. Would you feel comfortable doing that? We don't know which assessment tools you guys use and which ones would allow that, but certainly for some of your progress monitoring or data, that makes sense. So what do you think? If you were familiar with that particular assessment tool and you demonstrated that you understood it and how to score it. Now the interpretation would still be up to the SLP and you, but I mean, what do you think about that? I don't know. Then this is interesting, and I don't understand this, so maybe you can interpret it for me. What's not within the scope of practice is participating in an interdisciplinary team meeting, which would be your IEP meetings, without the presence or prior approval of the supervising SLP. So does that mean you guys could do some of your IEPs? I don't know. We're going to have a list of questions that we present to ASHA, and that's what I'm going to ask. Does that mean that you can have some meetings, certainly not the initial, because that requires the SLP to develop the plan. But what about the second year or the end of the year? You would still need your supervisor's co-signature, but how comfortable do you feel writing the IEPs? And then beyond that, how comfortable would you feel in doing your own IEPs? Now that one's probably the least likely thing to happen, but we're going to ask ASHA how they interpret that, and then I need your feedback as to how comfortable you would feel in running your own IEPs, particularly with students that are like simple. You again would have to advocate for those times when, oh yeah, I need you in on this IEP meeting because it's going to be complicated, or the parents are going to ask me a lot of questions and I don't know if I can answer all those. They're going back to allowing a supervisor to supervise 3 SLPAs, which they were saying 2 the last time. So we'll keep that in the guidance document. And is Alicia on here? Okay, she's not on here. So the next meeting we'll talk about this certification.
I am.
Oh, okay. All right.
I had to return a student.
Pardon?
I had to return a student. I just
okay. All right. Well, first of all, guys, do any of you have comments? You're going to have plenty of opportunities to comment on the guidance document. Please take some time, give me feedback, give me suggestions, tell me what you think, what could make your life easier, and still maintain quality of care. But we also need to talk about your certification. I am so excited that ASHA is starting this SLPA certification, and you guys would fall under the yellow circle, which is the current SLPAs, because you're already working. You can easily get 100 hours under a certified SLP, and then you would do the modules and the praxis, which Alicia is going to share with us because she's in the process of doing that. And is anybody else who's on here doing that? Any of you guys, are you also in the process? Because this is exciting. It's about time. And I think it offers some good opportunities for us. There are some people who are just graduating with a BA or a BS, and they can take some additional courses and they can work as an SLPA to get their hours. That's not you. And right now in the state, but this might change, there is an opportunity in some states for people who have a BA or a BS and with a different degree to take additional classes or go to the MU certification program and get to the place to where they're ready to work as an SLPA and do the certification. So that's not available right now. I want to tell you that some people have been saying, well, when's this going to take place and how soon are we going to see this? Let me tell you, anything that happens policy-wise, and this would be a policy, it's not a guidance, it's a policy, takes a while. It has to be presented, and it has to go through several reviews, and it has to be approved by the state board of education. So this is not going to happen right away. And people had been asking me, well, will it start this fall? I don't think so. Just remember, this is a policy change. And if you've heard anybody talk about the public law 2419, it's going through reviews now, and then there's going to be, opportunities for public comment. And so it's a policy change, not a guidance document change. We can change some of the guidance things as far as direct and indirect supervision and all that, but policy, it would involve changing what's called Public Law 5202, which is related to requirements and certification and that kind of thing. So just, it's going to happen. Hopefully, Leanne's going to present it, but it's not going to happen right away. So just knowing that. Now, Alicia, what I'd like for you to do as we go through these steps is you just kind of provide additional feedback about each of those. And again, is anybody else going through the process now? Okay, so the first thing that you do, and I think Alicia has started this process, and that's going through ASHA, completing the initial request and beginning the 6 modules and the $49. Is that correct, Alicia?
Yes, I did wind up taking the modules. There's a couple of things to note about those. Is that the modules on ASHA only provide you with a half hour of the OSHA and a half hour of the HIPAA. So you are needing still an additional 30 minutes for each of those courses. And that was something that I thought was kind of a little misleading, but they do state that in the application process itself. So that left me having to find, additional resources for those in those areas.
And you found what you really liked was at speechpathology.com, right?
Yes. At first glance, they do offer a free kind of sample 1-hour course that I did take, and those certificates from speech pathology and from ASHA both will arrive to you like within a few hours. They're very quick, and at speechpathology.com there is a specific 3-hour course that would fulfill all of the speech SLPA certification for ASHA in one 3-hour course. However, that's not a free option. Another thing that I found out too, as far as these courses are concerned, is that a lot of the things that I had as professional development from a county level they do not accept, as those are not hours from ASHA. So that was one thing that I had to double back. So I have taken all of those. I'm actually at the waiting for exam date level. So that's the only level of the application that I have left to do. And that can be what? Go ahead.
With the 1-hour courses and the courses, I don't think that they need to necessarily be ASHA approved, but they need to be communication disorder specific. And they provide a list on there of what topics they will cover or allow. You're better if it's ASHA approved, of course, because then that's a given and you don't have to go with those unknowns. But I think, unless they've changed it, it says that you have to cover the topics listed on the website. So probably a lot of the county things are specific to what's going on in the county, and they would not approve that. You said your ethics session was approved, right?
Yes, the ethics session was approved, And whenever they did have questions, the lady was really, really kind. Her name is Miss Wolf. And whenever she did have questions, she would just mention that she was unaware of that course content. And but they did decline, like they declined the SLPA supervising modules that we did with Libby earlier this year. That's the reason why I took the ASHA module, because it goes over the same things, the scope of practice, and I could have probably submitted like a transcript or some sort of like syllabus or something like that with the course to let them review, but I did not, as I didn't know how much longer that would be. But
I'm going to work on that.
Okay.
To see, but you know, the thing is, some of even the modules that we provide are state specific, and so they may not, but I am going to try to you know, do that work behind the scenes so that you guys don't have to worry about it.
Okay, but that's that was been the biggest challenge with that. I had no trouble with them verifying my hours of supervision of direct and indirect. It's honestly little more than an email or a phone call to your supervisor to specify yes or no. And at least that's what I was understanding it to be when I spoke with my current supervisor and past supervisors that I had. I listed 3 individuals, and they want those supervision hours within the past 5 years, but they want the courses to be current within the past 2. So I know I've gotten ahead of you, Libby. I'm sorry.
No. I mean, everybody can kind of follow along. No, I think, you know, all of those go together as far as what ASHA is required. And yes, Miss Wolf is wonderful. She is the one that presented last year to you guys about the ASHA certification process. And she has been wonderful as far as working with her, and she's the one that I will ask the ASHA questions about the guidance document or the scope of practice. But no, you've not gotten ahead. I mean, you do the modules, you do the prerequisite courses, and they're very specific on that, the ethics and the universal precautions and confidentiality, and then you're on the job training. So Alicia, when did you pay your $49?
I paid that prior to going back to speechpathology.com. So
Okay.
when I discovered that I was still lacking in that ethics and the privacy, or not ethics, but the OSHA and the privacy, the HIPAA, and you are able to take a FERPA class, which I took instead of the HIPAA, as it relays a bit more to us as far as our educational position. And it was very interesting. There was a lot of things that that I needed a good refresher on. But yeah, I did pay the $49, and of course your certification exam covers your first year's dues and the exam fees. For the exam, you do have the option of having it proctored at home, or you have the option of going to an on-site location. I chose the on-site location, as I remember it's crazy with kids having to get the time, but that's my choice, and now I have that scheduled for mid-June after school's let out.
Great. Okay. And I just saw that Charlotte had a question. Would that be for the overall school year? Yes. And thank you for answering that, Alicia. I couldn't see it from my end. So let me just get this link on here, and then we will, like I said, there's plenty of things that I need to ask you about in this questionnaire. Please take some time to fill it out. And here is the verification, but we're going to stay on as long as people, as long as Alicia can stay on. So you've got yours maybe scheduled in June, is that correct, your praxis?
Yes, yes, it's scheduled on, I think June 14th.
And so then after that, and then you get the 162 or above, then what happens? Do you have a sense of what's going to happen then?
I'm not entirely sure about the reporting, about the score reporting, but I believe it's my understanding that those scores go directly to ASHA, as that is just in the registration process. They have that, they have you provide information for the agency for reporting, and it lists ASHA, so I believe they get those scores right away. And then upon that passing score of 162, then I assume that you're able to add the C to your name.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which
So
I
that's
think
exciting.
is long overdue, and certainly something that I hope many of you will pursue. So let me just go back. I'm going to go to the next thing. So you do your initial certification. So then, Alicia, the 249, does that come afterwards? The cost of the 249?
No, 249 is just the initial. After, you do have to have the you do have to have like the yearly dues, and I'm looking real quick for that.
I've got it. It's in the middle there, 125.
Yes, and if you need to retake the test, I believe it's $99 retake.
Okay.
But for initial, it's 249.
Exactly.
And be sure to be in communication with your school boards. Hang on.
Be in communication, because they at the county level may recognize it as we're working to see what we can get at the state level.
Yes, and some counties also will assist their speech therapists in those renewal fees.
Yes.
That was one thing that they said that they would not take care of, like the initial fees, but then it could be a possibility for your county for the renewal. So be sure to check with that.
Excellent. And so then you maintain your certification, and then every 3 years you have to do a certification maintenance module through ASHA. And then we're hoping we're going to work toward recognition of your certification in West Virginia. That's going to take some time. That's why I have the big disclaimer. But, Leanne is very supportive, and it's just a matter of going through the process and getting it approved through the state board. Any questions about certification? Thank you, Alicia. This is exactly what people needed to hear. And wish you the best of luck. I think it's a grand idea that you're going somewhere away from the kids and being able to really focus that day on your exam.
I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a nice mommy break too.
Good for you. Anybody have any questions? Well, thank you guys. I'm sorry we went over 5 minutes, and I'm sure I talked way too fast, but you can certainly go back and look at these things that I referred to in the scope of practice, and I really want your all's feedback, because this might be a chance for us to make some adjustments. And if you have questions for the certification process, please put those in there as well. And if I can't answer it, I will talk to Alicia, or we'll answer it somehow, because we want to encourage that. I think it's about time you guys get recognized for the knowledge and skills that you have. So please, if you have questions about that, let us know. Anything else? I see Charlotte.
I
Go ahead,
I have
Alicia.
a question. This is Alicia again. With the upcoming ethics class, is that a second part of the one we had in fall, or is that new content?
New content.
Okay, great.
Yes. What we're doing, and I'm encouraging people to fill out that survey if you have a dilemma yourself. Thank you, Hannah. Thank you for taking the time for us. But yes, it will be new dilemmas. So if you've got one, please fill out that survey. It's anonymous. No one will ever know where it came from. And Leanne does try to address those. And I see Charlotte's typing. So that would be ethics. We've got a ethics fall and ethics spring. Okay, Charlotte, thank you. Sorry we went over. Thank you guys. Have a great Easter. Alicia, thank you so much for presenting. I really appreciate it. And I'm going to stop the recording because I almost forgot. But I wanted to make sure we had everybody's questions answered. So I'm going to stop the recording and